I won the lottery. Not just a few thousand, not even $1,047 million. And instead of popping champagne and shouting it from the rooftops, I made a decision that would change everything. I told absolutely no one. Why? Because in my family, money has never brought us closer, it's only torn us apart. So I wanted to see the truth for myself. If I asked them for help when I had nothing, who would actually stand by me? What I discovered nearly broke me, but it also freed me. Before I take you into the heart of the story, do me one small favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to Not So Perfect Family 365. Here, we share real stories of loyalty, betrayal, and family secrets that might just change how you look at your own relationships. Now, let me tell you what really happened the night my entire life turned upside down. I won the lottery. Not an office pool, not a scratch-off miracle, $47 million. Numbers lined up and I stared, waiting for them to laugh at me. Until last Tuesday, my life was beige and budgeted. I'm 34, a staff accountant at a marketing firm. I schedule laundry for off-peak hours. My credit card balance sits in the corner like a roommate who swears he's moving out soon. Every morning at 6, I open my banking app and feel that familiar choke of someone who knows exactly how much a light bulb costs. Cassie, you got the report. Arnold, my boss, popped his head over my cube. It's on your desk. It was my analysis. At the client meeting, he presented it as if it were his. I swallowed the heat. At lunch, my phone buzzed. This is a courtesy call regarding your past due balance, a woman chirped. I'll make a payment Friday. MS, Lane, that will bring you current for 2 weeks. I laughed without humor. Then we're both blessed with something to look forward to. Family isn't safer ground. My parents split when I was 14 and sprinted into new lives. Dad Greg married a realtor who talks in square footage. Mom Diane married a man who budgets affection and calls generosity a tax shelter. My brother Jason is charming like a spring storm, noise, promises. My sister, Lily, married a surgeon and learned to say tight right now from the mouth of a walk-in wine cellar. They love me best when I'm useful. When Jason borrowed $5,000 to start over, I Venmo'd him until my savings keened. When Lily's wedding vendor surprised them, I floated the difference. When Dad's roof met a storm, I mailed a check and watched Cancun photos appear a month later. Friday is my ritual. I stop at Nikki's Corner Mart, buy a lottery ticket. Mom calls that hope a tax on people who don't understand math. Dad prefers statistics. Jason says, cut out the middleman and give it to me. I keep playing because the cashier says, good luck, honey, like she means it. This time I didn't let the machine pick. I pressed birthdays, 0, 3, 12, 19, 21, 28, 30 months and days that built me. At home, I poured grocery store red, microwaved pad thai and pretended to watch a dating show where no one ever splits a check. At 8:31 p.m. I remembered. I opened the app and typed the numbers, braced for disappointment. First number matched. Second matched. Third, fourth, fifth. The sixth clicked into place like the last tooth on a zipper. Silence has a weight. Mine sat on my chest while the remote slid to the rug. No, I said to the empty room. I pulled up the live drawing, rewound, watched the balls fall again one by one. My hands shook. My breath went small and fast as if I'd sprinted without moving. I didn't sleep. I read all night, cousins who become siblings when you're rich, yachts that sink marriages, the headline, former winner bankrupt after 5 years. Trusts, anonymity, the long line of people who decide you owe them a better life. At 4 a.m., Portland was glass and quiet. I thought about the person I am at 6 a.m., the one counting light bulbs. Mom's voice, sweetie, you've always been so responsible, which is a polite way to say we count on you to bend first. Dad's hand on my shoulder after a lecture on emergency funds. Live below your means, he'd said. That way you owe no one. Lily's kitchen flashed across my mind. You know we'd help if we could, she'd said when I asked for the wedding money back. Jason on a porch somewhere. I'll get it to you Friday, Cass, swear. The text bubbles went gray and then went away. By 6, birds started. I brewed coffee I didn't drink and made a list I didn't need. Call a lawyer, breathe, don't say a word. At 9, I took my first sick day in 3 years and sat across from a gray-templed attorney. You can claim through a trust, he said, sliding papers. You can be as invisible as you're willing to be disciplined. Disciplined I can do, I said. At home, I slipped the ticket beneath the third book on my nightstand. My phone lit with a text from Arnold. Great work in there today. In where, he'd presented my memo again. Couldn't have done it without you, he added. I typed 3 replies, deleted all, and placed the phone face down. People say money changes you. Maybe it will. All I knew, standing barefoot on my rug, was that money had given me a silence that sounded like safety. My life split along an invisible seam, before Tuesday, after Tuesday. One life would be the life everyone could see, the other would be the life I chose. I opened a new message to my mother. I typed, "You will never believe what happened." I watched the sentence until the words went soft and meaningless. Backspace, backspace, backspace. The cursor blinked, waiting for the old version of me to reappear. I closed the message, slid the phone into a drawer, and turned the lock. No one would know, not yet. The night after I tucked the ticket away, sleep kept its distance. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling fan, remembering all the times I'd played savior for this family that couldn't be bothered to show up when I needed a fraction of the same grace. Memories hid in waves. Jason's call 3 years back. "Cassie, it's life or death. I swear this is the last time. Rehab will fix everything." My savings account held just over $5,300. I wired him $5,000. 3 weeks later, I learned he'd never set foot inside a facility. I found out from Lisa, who saw him at a poker game with our cousin Ryan. He said he was celebrating his clean start, she told me, and laughed like it was cute. I sat on the floor of my kitchen, crying into my fists, feeling stupid enough to choke. Then Lisa's wedding. "It's just $2,000, she said, standing in her veil, champagne flute in hand. "You're my sister, you'll get it back after the honeymoon." That honeymoon turned into a remodeled kitchen, then another car. 5 years later, no repayment, not even an apology. When I asked once, half joking, she blinked at me like I was greedy for bringing it up. And Dad, Gregory, his roof emergency. "Cass, I hate to ask, but the storm tore half the shingles off. I'm short until payday." I sent $1,500 I didn't really have. A month later, I saw him tagged on Facebook. White sand, turquoise water, him and Stephanie grinning in Cancun with matching sunglasses. I shut the app and hurled my phone onto the couch, so hard the screen cracked. Mom wasn't much better. When I was 25 and my Corolla's engine blew, she offered a lecture about budgeting while wearing a necklace Warren had bought her in Cabo. And yet, despite all that, I kept answering the phone, kept showing up, kept paying the bill no one else wanted to touch. Because that's what the responsible one does. I rolled over, staring at the glow of the city through my blinds, wondering if responsibility was just another word for sucker. By morning, I wore exhaustion like mascara smudges under my eyes. At work, Derek slapped his desk. "Cass, cover for me, Megan wants brunch." He left before I could respond. Arnold appeared 15 minutes later. "Where's Derek's report?" "On his desk," I said tightly, "but it isn't finished." Arnold sighed. "You know, Cassie, you need to be more of a team player. Not everything can be about you." I bit down so hard on my tongue. The copper taste of blood bloomed. Team player? I'd been the team, the coach, and the water boy for years, and all I got was another lecture. That night, wine in hand, I thought about loyalty, about love, about how in my family generosity always traveled in one direction. Mine, Charlotte, my best friend since college, called. Her voice was tired from another 12-hour hospital shift. "How's your week?" she asked. "I can't even describe it," I said carefully. "You sound different. What's going on?" I wanted to tell her, to spill the secret that buzzed under my skin like electricity. But the image of my mother's disappointed sigh, my father's lectures, Jason's pleading texts, they stopped me cold. If I couldn't trust my own blood, could I risk tainting the one friendship that hadn't let me down? Instead, I said, "Just work, same circus, different clowns." "Girl, you need a vacation or a miracle." I laughed too loud. Too sharp? Yeah, something like that. When we hung up, silence settled heavy again. The ticket was still in its hiding spot. A secret that felt bigger than my apartment, bigger than my life. And then an idea dark and dangerous slid into my thoughts. What if I didn't tell them at all? Not yet. What if I flipped the script, created a story, and tested them the way they'd tested me 100 times before? If I claimed I was broke, lost my job, drowning in bills, would anyone reach back the way I'd always reached out? The thought pulsed, hot and reckless, but once it was there, I couldn't shake it. I poured the last of the wine, whispered to the empty room, "Let's see who really loves me." And in the reflection of the dark window, I caught a glimpse of myself smiling, something between defiance and fear. Tomorrow, I decided the game would begin. Saturday, I lined up coffee mugs like soldiers and started drawing columns in a notebook. Who, what they'll say, what I'll ask. The page filled itself. Mom, Diane. Concerned hums, then Warren and I just can't right now. Dad, Greg, lecture first, math later, probably nothing. Lisa, Lils when she wants to sound cute, soft voice, hard no. Budget is tight. New backsplash in the background. Jason, emoji empathy vanish. Aunt Heather, moral superiority flavored with gossip. Cousin Ryan, promise, postpone, disappear. The only one that didn't make my stomach clench was Martha, my mother's sister. She'd give you half a sandwich and apologize it wasn't the whole loaf. If I was going to do this, it had to be clean. Same story, same number. No theatrics that could be fact-checked in 5 seconds. I wrote the bones. The firm restructured after losing 2 major accounts. My final check is delayed due to a payroll audit. I need $5,000 to cover rent and medical bills from tests I'm waiting on. I'll pay back within 3 months. Interest if they want it. I heard my father's voice in my head. Specifics make liars sound honest. I added specifics. A date for rent, a clinic name I'd actually visited once, the exact monthly amount my lease required. By noon, I was downtown in a conference room that smelled like copy paper and money. The attorney, Philip Montgomery, silver hair cut like he measured it, tapped a document. A blind trust protects you from attention. An LLC can hold any property you purchase. We'll stagger transfers so nothing looks sudden. Can I claim anonymously? I asked. In this state, yes, he said. Anonymity is discipline. You'll need to live like you're still counting coupons. For a while, I almost laughed. That part I can do in my sleep. He looked at me over his glasses. You'll be tempted to tell someone. Temptation makes noise. What if the noise is family? I asked. He didn't smile. Especially then. When I left, I had a folder thick with structures and new account numbers. On the walk home, I passed a window full of wedding dresses, bright white under track lights. For a second, my mother and I were shoulder to shoulder in another window, 2 panes and a pawnshop guitar between us. I was 8. We don't need new to be happy, she'd said and squeezed my hand. She used to smell like ivory soap and oranges, before love meant a man who called generosity a poor investment. Back in my apartment, I called Charlotte. Come over, I said. I need your brain. She arrived in scrubs and exhaustion. If this is about Derek, she said, kicking her shoes off, I'll help you hide the body. We sat on the floor, backs against the couch, knees up to the coffee table. I slid her the notebook. She read, then looked up. You're going to fake losing your job. I'm going to ask for help, I said, keeping my voice level. Once, kindly, like they've asked me 100 times. Her face softened, then tightened. Cass, you're the honest one. If you become a mirror of them, you'll hate the reflection. You think I already don't? The words came out sharper than I meant. I need to know who I can trust with the truth, the real truth. She rubbed the corner of the page with her thumb. Okay, then do it clean, no pylons, no guilt, same ask, same terms. 1 follow-up text max and you don't punish them for saying no. I nodded, grateful, agreed. She pointed at medical tests. If they ask what for? Fatigue, dizziness, I said. True enough some days. And if someone offers to have you move in? I'll say thank you and that my interviews are in the city. She set the notebook down. I hate this, she whispered. But I get it. I'll be your control group. If I start acting weird, you tell me. We practiced until the script fit in my mouth without that tin taste. Charlotte played my mother, my father, Lisa, soft voice, hard no, Jason with the cat typing texts. She was too good at it. At one point I started laughing and it turned into a sound that wasn't laughter. When she left, the apartment exhaled. I opened a new checking account with a couple $100 so the screenshot would look lean. I drafted a note to myself titled Rules and taped it inside the cabinet where I keep my mugs. Ask once. Don't beg. Don't explain your tests to make them kinder. No revenge purchases. Tell the right person the truth when you're sure they can carry it. Under that, I wrote 3 names. Martha, Charlotte, me. The sun slid down and took the color with it. I cooked eggs, burned them, ate them anyway. I pulled out a shoebox of ticket stubs and receipts, and found one I'd kept from the last time Mom and I had eaten pie together at a diner 4 years ago. We'd laughed until we cried about a couple at the next table who said moist too many times describing cake. She hugged me tight in the parking lot. You always were my steady one, she said. I remember thinking it was the nicest sentence anyone had said to me in a decade. Steady isn't the same as safe. My phone buzzed, Jason. A photo of a dog in a sweater and beneath it, miss you sis, you good. Fine, I typed. I stared at the word until the letters broke apart. I erased it. I put the phone down. Instead, I opened the Notes app and made a private ledger of predictions with percentages. Mom helps 30%, Dad 10%, Lisa 15%, Jason 5%, Heather negative interest. Ryan 20% promise, 0% delivery. Martha 80%, not because she can, but because she will. The clock hit 9. I put on the softest sweatshirt I own and sat on the edge of my bed. My mouth tasted like metal. I scrolled to MOM and hovered. Charlotte's text came through then. Please remember this isn't about winning, it's about knowing. I typed back, I know, then thank you. I hit call. The ring sounded too loud in my small room. 1 ring, 2, 3, the 4th ring cut off. Cassie, Mom's voice, breathless as if she'd rushed to get it. Is everything okay? She paused, and then added in a tone I hadn't heard in years, half hopeful, half afraid. Did something happen? Mom, my voice cracked. I leaned into it. I needed her to believe the weight of the story. The firm closed down completely. They lost their 2 biggest clients and folded overnight. I'm not getting my last paycheck and my savings are gone because of some medical tests. Oh my God, honey. Her inhale was sharp, and for a moment I let myself believe she might just reach across the years and the remarriage and the indifference. That's terrible. What are you going to do? I don't know, I whispered, letting the silence stretch. That's why I'm calling. I hate to even ask, but I need help, just until I find something new. About $5,000 for rent bills. The line went quiet. I could hear the sound of dishes clinking faintly in the background, the muffled laugh of Warren, her husband, somewhere in the house. Then her voice changed, warmer still, but carrying that edge of distance. Sweetheart, you know Warren and I just put a down payment on the lake house. We're a little cash poor right now. She coughed softly like she wanted to clear the guilt from her throat. Maybe your father could help, or Lisa. Paul makes such good money at the hospital. My stomach nodded. She didn't even try to find a way, just redirected. I'd rather not call Dad, I said, truth in every syllable. And Lisa has her kids' tuition. I thought maybe. I'll talk to Warren. She interrupted the way she always had when the conversation tilted toward responsibility. But I can't promise anything. You know how careful he is with, well, you know. I did know, careful was her word for selfish. Thanks, Mom, I managed. I appreciate it. After we hung up, I sat with the silence. I wrote her response in my notebook, concerned tone, immediate deflection, likely no. I slept badly, replaying the call until morning came. Coffee was bitter in my mouth. My stomach felt raw. Still, I dialed the next number. Dad. He met me at a coffee shop, his choice. He was already seated when I arrived, posture perfect, gray hair combed, glasses polished. You look tired, he said by way of greeting. No hug, no smile, just assessment. I laid out the story. Company collapsed, no paycheck, medical tests, rent due. He listened with that face I knew so well, the one that looked like he was grading me, red pen hovering over every word. When I finished, he leaned back, arms folded. Cassandra, I have always told you about financial responsibility. Tone slipped into his classroom register, the one he used on teenagers who forgot their homework. This is exactly why I said 6 months savings. Where's that? Life happened, Dad, car repairs, medical bills. Not everyone can set aside half their paycheck. He sighed heavily, as though my existence was an inconvenience. And now you expect others to bail you out. What about your spending habits? Streaming services? Do you really need to live in that apartment? I'm asking for $5,000, Dad, just until Stephanie and I are focusing on retirement, he interrupted smoothly. We can't dip into those funds, it would be irresponsible. This will be a good learning experience for you. Sometimes, Cassandra, people need to hit rock bottom before they change. My throat burned. So you won't help me? He patted my hand like I was a child who spilled milk. This is for your own good. I swallowed hard, scribbled his verdict in the notebook later, 20 minutes of lecture. $0. That evening, Charlotte came over, still in scrubs. I poured her a glass of wine before I even spoke. Well, she asked. Mom says they're broke because of a lake house. Dad gave me a lecture and told me rock bottom would be good for me. Her eyes softened with the kind of pity that makes you both grateful and furious. Cassie, I knew they wouldn't help, I said quickly, different hearing it, seeing how fast they slide the responsibility away. She shook her head. And you're still going down this road, you still want to keep asking? Yes, I said with a sharpness that surprised even me. I have to see it through. I need to know, Charlotte, really know. She exhaled long, the way nurses do when the answer isn't what they want to hear. That night I sat with my notebook again, pen tapping against the page. 2 down. Both disappointments. Told myself I wasn't surprised. I told myself this was data proof. But underneath, something smaller whispered, maybe you're wrong, maybe someone will show up. I scrolled to my sister's number. Lily, her name glowed on the screen like a dare. My thumb hovered, my chest tightened, then I pressed call. Her voice, bright and warm, answered before the second ring. Cassie, what a surprise. Come over tomorrow, Paul's golfing, the kids are out, we can talk. And my stomach dropped, because I already knew how this was going to end. Lisa lils when she wants to sound cute. Lily, in our old photo albums, lives behind a gate that opens like a well-rehearsed smile. The house is all angles and glass and a front yard that must cost a car payment in landscaping. She meets me at the door in buttery yoga pants and a sweater that looks like it has a first and last name. Cass, she hugs me with perfume and air. You look skinny, are you eating? Sometimes, I say, because it's easier than explaining that stress suppresses appetite better than any diet. We sit at the kitchen island, marble the size of a sidewalk. 2 framed school crafts, handprints in paint, lean against a vase of eucalyptus like props. She makes me a latte with a machine that hisses like a tiny dragon. So, she says, folding her perfect hands. What's going on? I tell her the same story I told our mother and father. Firm collapsed, lost clients, final check delayed, rent due, tests I'm waiting on. She listens with generous eyes, nodding in all the right places. For breath, I am 8 again and she is 12, braiding my hair on the porch while cicadas buzzed, telling me not to cry when Dad was late. That's awful, she says, squeezing my fingers. You don't deserve that. I need a bridge, I say softly. 5,000. I'll pay it back in 3 months. I'll put it in writing. The pause is less than a second but lasts forever. Her gaze slides to the window, then back to me. 5 is a lot, it's just the timing. We just did the master bath and the Audi was last month. Tuition too, and Paul is very strict about our budget right now. Of course, I say, my voice is level, almost clinical. I figured I'd ask. We could do something smaller, she rushes in. Maybe 1,000 or 500, I'll have to ask Paul. It's prickly when I move money around. Whatever you're comfortable with, I say. The words taste like chalk. She brightens, relieved to be generous in theory. Or, she says, head tilting, you could stay here for a bit, save on rent. The guest room is full of storage, but we can clear it out, eventually. I'm interviewing downtown, I say, I need to be close. Right, she nods, of course. She swipes at her phone. I'll text Paul now, he's on the back 9. The espresso machine hisses again. She sets a second cup in front of me, a consolation prize worth $4, and tells me about the contractor who ghosted them, the countertop that came in a shade called mist instead of cloud, the audacity, the trauma. I sip and nod and see, with humiliating clarity, the space between our emergencies. When I stand to go, she hugs me again. We'll figure something out, she says. Family first. In the car, I watch the driveway gate close in the rearview and think, family first, but only if it fits the budget. By the time I hit the freeway, my phone buzzes. Lisa, talk to Paul. He says we can't do cash right now. Maybe we can help in other ways, like watching the kids while we do date night, or you could take our Costco run this month. I stare at the text until the words blur, then type, thanks for thinking of me. I add a heart and immediately hate myself for it. At home, I write her verdict in the notebook, sympathy. No money, offers help that saves them time. I sit there with the pen in my hand and try not to think about a white dress and $2,000 that still hasn't found its way home. My phone lights up again. Jason, yo sis. Heard you had a rough patch, you okay? I rub my eyes. I text back, could use a little help. $5,000 to cover rent and bills. I'll pay you back. 3 dots, they pulse, then disappear, then return. Jason, man, I'm tight right now. New apartment took all my deposit, but I got you with prayers. The laugh that comes out of me is a bark. I stare at it, then put the phone face down. It buzzes again almost immediately. Jason, actually, could you spot me 300 till Friday? My landlord is trippin'. I pick the phone up, put it down. Walk a lap around the couch. Pick it up again. Me, I'm asking you for help. Jason, I know. I'm just saying we're both struggling, right? We look out for each other. Memories unspool whether I invite them or not. Jason pushing my bike down the cul-de-sac, yelling, you got it, Cass. The first time I stayed out late and Mom grounded me, he snuck me a grilled cheese through my window. He taught me to bluff at go fish and lie to teachers without blinking. I have loved him longer than I have loved my own reflection. Me, I sent you 5,000 for rehab. 3 dots. Nothing. Me, you didn't go. He calls. I let it ring twice and answer. Why are you keeping score? His voice is raw, defensive. I said I'd pay you back. It's been 3 years, Jace. I had stuff, I'm getting my life together, I thought you'd be, you know. He searches for the word that will absolve him. Supportive. I always am, my voice cracks and I hate that it cracks. I need help. He exhales into the phone, a long, theatrical sound. I don't have it. Then, softer, trying for sincere. But I know a guy. He does loans for people in a pinch. Like short-term, he helped me once. I close my eyes. I'm not taking a loan from your bookie. He's not a bookie, he's a consultant. He says it like he believes it. I'll send his number, he's chill. Don't, I say, but the text comes through as we hang up. A first name, no last. A number that starts with an area code I don't recognize. I add Jason's entry to the notebook, empathy emojis. Asks me for money. Offers predatory help. I lean back and stare at the ceiling until the smoke detector dot becomes a constellation. Charlotte stops by after her shift with takeout and eyes that catalog everything. How was Queen Granite? She asks, setting cartons on my coffee table. Kind, I say, in a way that doesn't cost. And your brother? I give her the short version. She flinches at consultant. You're still keeping score, she says gently. If I don't, I won't believe myself the next time I say no. I pick at a noodle. Do you ever realize you've been holding your breath for years and only notice when you finally exhale? All the time, she says. Usually right before I start crying in the hospital supply closet. We eat in a quiet that only people who love each other can make comfortable. I wash the 2 forks just to have something to do with my hands. When she leaves, she kisses my cheek and says, tomorrow, stop before you bleed. I promise to ask each person once, I say. No more, no less. She nods like that's both noble and insane. After she goes, I pull an old shoebox off the closet shelf. A mess of photographs, sunburned noses at the beach, birthday candles, Dad lifting me into the air in a backyard that looks bigger than it was. One picture of me and Lisa in hand-me-down dresses we pretended were gowns, her arm around my shoulder, my head against her. I remember the click of the camera and the certainty that the world was simple. Sisters, forever, full stop. The world is not simple. It has asterisks and subclauses and fine print that only appears when you need it to. By midnight, the apartment is quiet enough to hear my neighbor's faucet. My phone buzzes. I expect Jason or Lisa, another apology framed as logistics. Instead, Aunt Heather, Diane tells me you're calling around asking for handouts. We need to talk about your choices. And then before I can react, a second ping. Ryan, cuz, heard you're in a bind. Let's meet tomorrow, my treat. I can help, big time. I stare at both messages. One smells like judgment. The other smells like smoke. I didn't want to answer Aunt Heather's message, but she was the kind of woman who would call every relative within a 5-mile radius until she got what she wanted. So the next morning, I drove across town to her house. Her estate, really. White columns, manicured lawn, the kind of place where you feel underdressed even if you came in a ball gown. She met me at the door with her usual pursed-lipped smile. "Cassandra," she said, pronouncing all 4 syllables like a summons to court. "Come in." The living room gleamed, polished wood floors, crystal chandelier, throw pillows that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She gestured for me to sit, then perched opposite like a queen on her throne. "I heard," she began, eyes narrowing, "that you've been calling around asking for assistance." I swallowed. "The firm closed, Aunt Heather. I just need a little help to get through the next few months." She gave a sharp laugh, not unkind, but sharp enough to cut. "And how did you let yourself get into such a position? I told your father years ago you should have taken that job at the bank. But no, you wanted freedom. Well, freedom comes at a cost. I didn't come here for lecture," I said quietly, though my pulse thudded in my ears. "I came because I thought family." "Family doesn't reward irresponsibility," she interrupted, smoothing her silk skirt. "Do you know what I was doing at your age? Running a household, raising children, supporting my husband while he built his business. Not calling people, begging for handouts." The word begging landed like a slap. "I'm not begging," I said, firmer now. "I'm asking just once." She leaned forward, voice dropping. "Cassandra, you have to learn. Choices have consequences, and if you've made poor ones, then perhaps this is your lesson." For a moment, I saw her not as my aunt, but as every voice that ever told me my struggles were moral failings. My pen scratched angrily across the notebook in my head. "Heather, judgment, $0, spreads gossip." "Thank you for your time," I said, standing. My voice trembled, but I didn't let her see my hands shake as I walked out. Her parting shot followed me to the door. "I hope you find your footing, dear, but don't drag the rest of us down while you're looking." Ryan texted me that afternoon, "Lunch, on me, we'll talk." I met him at a noisy sports bar where he sat slouched in a booth, sunglasses on indoors. The smell of beer and fried food clung to the air. He grinned when he saw me, that same boyish grin that used to charm teachers into extra credit. "Cuz," he spread his arms. "You look great, seriously. What's it been, a year?" "2, I corrected, sliding into the booth. "Time flies." He waved the waitress over. "Burger for me, whatever she wants, it's on me today." That detail stuck on me. He wanted me to see it. We made small talk until the food came, then he leaned in. "So, heard you're in a jam." I nodded. "Yeah, company closed. I need about 5,000 to keep myself afloat until I find something new." He whistled low. "That's a chunk, but you know what? I can help. Family, right?" Relief pricked at the corner of my eyes. "Really?" "Of course, I just need to shuffle some stuff around. Meet me Friday and I'll bring a check." He patted my hand like a benevolent uncle. "Don't worry, Cass, I got you." I wanted to believe him. God, I did. But I also remembered Christmas 3 years ago when he swore he'd quit gambling, then vanished halfway through dinner and didn't come back until morning, smelling like whiskey and bad luck. Still, I forced a smile. "Thank you, Ryan." "No problem." He leaned back, grinning like he'd just won something. We finished lunch and I left with a flicker of hope I hated myself for feeling. Friday came. At noon, I texted him, "Still good to meet." 1 hour, no reply. 2 hours, "Hey, just checking in." 3 hours, ding, a text, something came up. Rain check, for drowning person. By Sunday, my calls went straight to voicemail. By Tuesday, the text stopped sending altogether. I sat at my kitchen table, pen pressing hard into the notebook. Ryan, promise, delay, vanish, $0. I closed the book and pressed it to my chest. My heart beat through the cardboard like it wanted out. One by one, the people I'd bailed out, supported, held together, they were showing me their true selves, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Only one name on my list remained, the poorest, the one with nothing to spare. Aunt Martha. I stared at her name on the page, hand trembling, afraid. Because if she failed me too, I would have no one left at all. I didn't call Martha first. She called me. My phone lit up at 7:12 a.m., the exact hour she used to leave for school with a canvas tote and a thermos of weak coffee. "Honey," she said when I answered, "your mother mentioned something about your job. Are you all right?" No one else had led with that sentence, "Are you all right?" as if I were the point, not the problem. "I'm hanging in," I said, and the lie felt soft in my mouth. "Can we meet?" "Of course." The diner on 5th, 11. The place hasn't changed since we were kids. A bell over the door, cracked red vinyl booths, a waitress who calls everyone sweetheart. I beat her there and watched through the window as her little sedan eased into a spot with a cough and a tremble. She climbed out slowly, a cardigan buttoned wrong at the top, hair yanked into a ponytail with a scrunchie that had seen things. "Look at you," she said, hugging me like good news. Her perfume was the same drugstore floral from every school play and science fair. "Let me see your face." She took my cheeks in her hands. "You're brave, but you're tired." I told her my script: restructuring, lost clients, delayed check, rent, tests. As the words came out, guilt nipped at my ankles. When I finished, she didn't reach for lecture. She reached across the table and took my hands the way you take a child's when they're about to cross a street. "That's a lot," she said. "I'm sorry you're carrying it alone." One sentence and my throat stung. "I wouldn't ask," I said, and felt the old shame try to climb my spine. "It's just 5,000, I can pay it back, I promise." She frowned, not at me, at the number, at the world. "Money," she muttered, "always shows up on the stage and steals the scene." She waved the waitress over. "2 coffees, and a slice of apple pie, warm please, with cheddar." "You and your cheese on pie," I said, almost laughing. "Don't knock it. Salt makes the sweet sweeter." She leaned her elbows on the formica. "I've been where you are in ways you know and ways you don't. You've got more grit than that whole family of ours. That doesn't mean you have to be the grittiest one alone." The pie arrived. She cut it in half with a fork and slid the bigger piece to me like it was medicine. Then she did a small, careful thing, reached into her tote and took out a plain white envelope, the kind you buy in bulk at the dollar store. She set it between us and kept her hand on it like a paperweight. "I was going to mail this to you for your birthday," she said, "but I'd rather see your eyes when you open it." The flap wasn't even sealed. Inside was a stack of 20s, 50s, a few hundreds, not crisp, not new, money that had lived a life. I counted with my eyes and stopped at 3,000. "Martha, no, it came out too fast, too loud." The guy in the next booth looked over. "Yes," she said, "and when Martha says yes like that, there's nothing in the world that can untangle it. It's not the full amount, I wish it were, but it's real and it's yours." "I can't take this," I whispered. "You need this." "I need you," she said simply. "And I need to know you're not losing sleep over rent when what you should be losing sleep over is whether the world will ever make room for how good you are." The waitress brought the check and Martha tucked a tip so generous it made the woman blink. I stared at the envelope again. The cash looked absurd on the table, like a bird in a grocery store. "Martha," I said, softer now, trying to find a foothold. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure of 2 things," she said. "1, if I wait until it's easy to give, I'll die with my pockets full and my heart empty. 2, if you ever pay me back, I'll use it on something impractical and stupid just to spite you." She smiled. "A margarita machine or a bedazzled cane." My laugh cracked clean in the middle. She reached out and brushed a thumb under my eye like I was still the kid who cried when a librarian stamped overdue on my favorite book. "If it helps you breathe tonight, take it," she said. "If it helps you breathe next month to pay me back, do that. Either way, you're not alone." When we stood, Winston pressed a hand to her hip. A flicker of pain, quickly evicted, she caught me noticing and rolled her eyes. "Old hinge," she said. "It squeaks, I oil it with stubbornness." In the parking lot she paused, then added, almost offhand, "And if you need to save money, my couch becomes a bed. It's lumpy, but it's loyal." My chest tightened so fast it hurt. "You can't keep doing this," I said, "collecting strays who happen to share your last name." "Sure I can," she said, unlocking the car. "It's a hobby." I carried the envelope like something fragile all the way home. At my kitchen table, I laid it down and stared until the bills blurred into a green watercolor. $3,000. More than any of them would give. Less than she could afford. The weight of it wasn't paper, it was love with calluses. I told myself not to Google. I Googled anyway. Teacher salaries, utility rates, the price of a hip replacement, the average interest on a savings account if you can put anything in one at all. I imagined the envelope in Martha's top dresser drawer, tucked beneath socks, labeled in neat ballpoint, for someday, and she'd handed it to me like it was nothing, like it was air. I tried to eat. The fork clinked against an empty plate. I tried to watch TV. Every laugh track sounded like clapping for the wrong person. Finally, I texted her, "Come over tonight, I made tea." She responded with a cartoon thumbs up, a thing she sends because she thinks it looks like a mitten. She arrived with a paperback mystery and a bag of clementines. Vitamin C, she announced, filling my fruit bowl like she was redecorating. Prevention is cheaper than cure. We sat on my couch with chipped mugs and steam ghosting the air. She told me about a kid who'd come back to visit her classroom, now taller than the doorway, and how he still couldn't pronounce photosynthesis. I told her about Charlotte's hospital and a patient who thanked her for pronouncing his name right. We laughed until the room felt warmer than my old radiator could make it. Then the laughter slid away and left space behind it, the kind of space that demands you fill it with truth. "Martha," I said, setting my cup down so I wouldn't spill it when my hand started to shake. "There's something I haven't told you." She didn't flinch. She didn't rush in with guesses. She just turned her whole face toward me in that way she has, like she's opening a door and stepping back so you can walk through. "Okay," she said. "I'm listening." "I didn't lose my job," I said, the words landing on the rug between us and refusing to bounce. "And that's not the only thing." For a long moment, Martha didn't say anything. She just studied me the way she used to study her students when they lied about their homework. Not angry, not accusatory, just waiting for the rest of the truth. I set the mug down with shaking hands. "I made it all up. The company's fine. I didn't lose my job, and I'm not waiting on test results. I wanted to see who would actually be there for me if I needed help." Her brows knit together, but her voice stayed calm. "You were testing us?" "Yes." The words scraped out of me like glass. I was tired of always being the one who gave and never knowing if anyone would give back. I needed to know who cared about me, not what I could provide. She leaned back slowly, exhaling through her nose. "Sad," she said finally. "Not at you, Cassie, at what made you feel like this was the only way." Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes. "You're the only one who showed up. Everyone else, Mom, Dad, Lisa, Jason, Heather, Ryan, they all had excuses, or worse." Martha shook her head with a weary smile. "People show who they are when giving costs them something. It's not a test, sweetheart, it's a revelation, and sometimes it's ugly." Her words sank into me. I stared at the envelope she had given me earlier, those worn bills that represented nearly everything she had. My stomach twisted with guilt so fierce it hurt. "I don't deserve this," I whispered. "Not your money, not your kindness." "You deserve love," she corrected softly. "And love isn't about deserving, it's about showing up, that's all." I couldn't hold it in anymore. The other truth, the bigger one, pressed against my chest like it would crush me if I kept it caged. "Martha, there's more." She didn't flinch. "All right." I swallowed hard. "I didn't just lie about the job. I won the lottery. $47 million. Her eyes widened, but she didn't gasp or demand proof. She just let the words hang between us until they became real. "That," she said finally, "is life-changing." "I know, that's why I lied. I read stories about winners losing everything, families ripping each other apart. I couldn't tell anyone, not Mom, not Dad, not even Charlotte at first. I had to be sure." Martha's expression softened into something between pride and sorrow. "And now you're sure?" "Yes," my voice broke. "The only one who offered me anything was you, and you have the least to give. You were willing to empty yourself for me, even when you thought I had nothing." She reached across the couch, placing her warm, lined hand over mine. "Cassie, I don't need your millions. I need you safe. I need to know you're not being eaten alive by the people who take and never return." Her selflessness made my chest ache. "I want to help you," I said. "Your medical bills, your apartment, everything. You shouldn't be worrying about money at all." She shook her head with a gentle laugh. "I'm content, honey. My little apartment, my students, my books. But if you truly want to help, use that money to build a life you believe in. Don't let it rot in secrecy or fuel the kind of greed you're afraid of." I thought of Dad's lectures, Mom's excuses, Lisa's remodels, Jason's scams. Then I thought of Martha's cardigan with mismatched buttons, her clementines in my fruit bowl, the envelope of bills she could barely spare. The contrast was unbearable. "I'll still make sure you're taken care of," I said firmly. "You don't get to argue that one." Her smile was tired but radiant. Stubborn, just like your mother before she learned to fold herself into other people's shapes. We sat in silence, listening to the radiator hiss and the city hum outside. I felt lighter and heavier all at once. The secret was out and in the best possible place it could land. But relief doesn't last. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. "Mom, heard you asked Lisa for money too. Why are you pitting us against each other?" Another buzz. "Dad, Stephanie tells me you've been calling everyone for handouts. This is exactly the kind of irresponsibility I warned you about." My chest tightened. The family had turned my request into gossip, a morality play where I was the villain. I looked at Martha, my face pale in the lamplight. "They know," I whispered. She took my hand again, squeezing hard. "Then it's time to decide what kind of truth you want to live with, Cassie." And for the first time, I realized the storm I feared wasn't coming. It was already here. I picked Sunday because it sounds gentler than it is. I made coffee. I lined up mismatched mugs. I hid the envelope from Martha in my sock drawer and put on the sweater my mother says makes me look responsible. as if clothes can carry that weight for you. They arrived in clusters, tracking dirt and opinions. Mom first, air kissing my cheek like we were at a fundraiser. Warren behind her checking his watch. Dad and Stephanie together, a united front in good leather. Lisa with a casserole like absolution, Paul carrying it and looking bored. Jason late enough to make it a personality. Aunt Heather last, sniffing like my building offended her. Martha slipped in quietly and squeezed my arm. I breathed. My living room isn't built for this many egos. They filled the space anyway, in the way expensive perfume does, too much, too fast. Impossible to ignore. Thank you for coming, I said. My hands found each other and tried to hide. I let them. There's been a lot of talking about me instead of to me. I wanted to fix that. Mom perched on the edge of the couch. We've all been worried, she said, finding the softest word to place over something sharper. You've been calling around asking for help, I said. Once, like all of you have asked me many times. Dad leaned forward, elbows on knees. Cassandra, if this is about money, your approach has been. I didn't invite you here for lecture, I said, and surprised myself with how steady it sounded. I invited you to tell you two things. First, I'm fine. I've found a new job with better pay and benefits. I start next month. Paul straightened slightly. Congratulations, he said, the way surgeons congratulate bodies for surviving. Lisa smiled too brightly. That's amazing. See, I told Paul you always land on your feet. Second, I said, I want to be clear about what family will look like for me going forward. Warren made a small noise, half scoff, half cough. What does that mean? It means I won't be a safety net anymore, I said. No more loans. No more keeping secrets that make your lives easier at the cost of mine. No more pretending I'm okay with being the person you call when things go wrong, only to be ignored when I need a fraction of the same grace. The room changed temperature. Stephanie's smile thinned. Dad's mouth adjusted for a rebuttal. That's unfair, Mom said quickly. We all have obligations. If timing had been different. Timing was a lake house, I said, not raising my voice. Timing was a master bath. Timing was an Audi. Timing was retirement funds can't be touched. Timing was tight right now, which somehow never applies when I'm the one being asked. Lisa flushed. I offered our guest room, she said. That counts. It counted for you. I said, it would have saved your budget, not my rent. Jason lifted a hand, palm out. Okay, can we not attack each other? We're family. Family, Aunt Heather echoed, chin high. Which is precisely why you shouldn't be calling around, begging, and pitting siblings against each other. Begging, the word tasted like tin. I asked, once. Dad cleared his throat. You've always struggled to hear advice you don't like, Cassandra. When I explained the importance of an emergency fund, I had one, I said, until I emptied it for Jason's rehab, which he didn't attend. Jason flinched and rolled his eyes in one motion. Wow, keeping score, classic. Sometimes the scoreboard is the only way to stop the game, I said. Stephanie laced her fingers together as if about to pray. We all understand stress, dear, but turning this into a blame session helps no one. I'm not blaming, I said. I'm drawing a line. You don't have to like it. You do have to respect it. Paul spoke up, voice cool. What is this new job exactly? You said better pay and benefits. I met his eyes. I'm moving into nonprofit work, I said. I'll be the executive director of a foundation I'm building. We're focused on seniors who live alone, especially those estranged from their families. Silence, then a low sound from Warren that might have been a laugh. You, a foundation? Yes, I said. And you can afford that, Aunt Heather said, each word wrapped in skepticism. On what salary? Enough, I said. Because value isn't only what you deposit in a bank. It's what you refuse to spend yourself on when people ask you to. That's poetry, she said, not math. Martha leaned forward, voice soft but carrying. She said she's fine, she reminded them. Let her be fine. Mom's eyes flicked to Martha, then back to me. It would have been nice, she said, if you'd come to me first before calling everyone. I did, I said. You said you were cash poor because of the lake house. Her mouth tightened. We've worked hard for that house. I know, I said. I worked hard for the money I gave you. Different verbs, same sentence. Dad tried again, the teacher back at the front of his class. We're not the villains you're painting us to be. We would have helped. You didn't, I said. And that's okay. You don't owe me 5,000. But you also don't get to tell yourselves a story where you're generous and I'm ungrateful. Jason stood, pacing because sitting still makes him honest. So what? Now you're cutting us off. You're what? Punishing us. I'm protecting myself, I said. There's a difference. Lisa's lower lip trembled in a way that used to break me. I feel like you're calling me a bad sister. I'm calling you an adult, I said gently. With choices, so am I. Paul shifted the casserole to the coffee table like an offering. If you need to borrow smaller amounts, he said, we could talk about a schedule. I almost laughed. No, Stephanie exhaled. This tone, she said, isn't helpful. This tone is mine, I said. You're hearing it because I've spent years speaking yours. Aunt Heather glanced at her phone, thumbs moving. The group text would be humming soon, a hive full of stings. I looked at each of them one by one, letting the quiet fill in the words I didn't want to say out loud. I'm done buying love. I'm done earning respect you never intended to give. I'm glad you came, I said finally. Truly, I wanted to say these things once with my mouth. While my hands weren't holding out anything but the truth, Dad stood, straightening like dismissal. Well, he said, smoothing his jacket. I hope this new venture teaches you discipline. It taught me distance, I said, which I needed more. They trickled out, leaving perfume and judgment in their wake. Lisa hugged me hard and whispered, "We'll talk," which is family code for "we'll find a better angle." Jason gave me a two-finger salute that meant nothing. Mom kissed my cheek without meeting my eyes. Warren nodded at my walls like he owned them. Heather's heels clicked down the hall like punctuation. When the door finally shut, the room exhaled. My houseplant seemed relieved. Martha stayed, gathering cups into the sink like she'd made the mess herself. We stood shoulder to shoulder at the counter, the way we used to peel apples at her kitchen table. You did well, she said. I know how hard that was. It was easier than I thought. I surprised myself with the truth of it. I wasn't afraid of disappointing them for once. Before she could answer, my phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Charlotte. Charlotte, proud of you. Call me when you can. Also, can you check your email? Something weird. My stomach tightened. Weird and email has a smell, trouble mixed with toner. I opened my laptop and clicked the subject line Charlotte had forwarded. Confidential, trust documentation, action required. The email was from Philip's office, a polite reminder to sign a final set of papers for the blind trust. It had an attachment. I clicked without thinking and a scanned cover letter filled the screen. To Cassandra Wilson, trustee, the Arcadia Trust. Disbursement schedule and initial capitalization. Behind me, Martha went still. In the doorway, someone cleared a throat. I looked up. Lisa hadn't left. She stood there, eyes on the screen, mouth parting, her voice a whisper that cut anyway. Trustee. Lisa's whisper hung in the air like a shard of glass. Trustee, she had seen enough. I snapped the laptop shut, heart pounding in my ears. You're still here, I said, sharper than I meant. Her eyes were wide, calculating the way they'd looked when we were kids sneaking cookies, and she realized I was about to tell Mom. Cassie, she breathed. What was that? What are you hiding? Martha set the mug she was holding onto the counter with a deliberate clink. Lisa, she said gently, maybe it's time to go. But Lisa stepped farther into the room, voice low but urgent. No, something's going on. That wasn't a bill. That wasn't job paperwork. Trustee, what the hell is the Arcadia Trust? My pulse skidded. The whole plan, months of secrecy, careful scripts, hiding behind ordinary, teetered on the edge. One word could shove it off. I could feel Martha's steady presence beside me, her silence asking the same question. Do you trust her? I looked at Lisa, my sister, the girl who once held my hair when I threw up after my first hangover, the woman who now offered lattes instead of lifelines. I thought of her perfect kitchen, her tight finances, her guest room full of storage. I heard myself say very softly, it's nothing for you to worry about. Her brows shot up. You're lying. I forced a smile. Lisa, please, you should go. She stared at me for a long moment, lips pressing together, then turned without another word. The door clicked behind her and the silence afterward was thicker than any fight. That night I sat on the floor with Martha, the two of us eating leftover pie with our fingers like kids. My chest still hummed with adrenaline. You don't owe her an explanation, Martha said. I know, I whispered. But she's going to wonder, she's going to ask. She'll gossip first, Martha corrected softly. And in that noise you'll find your answer. I exhaled. The truth was out of its box, and I knew it wouldn't stay hidden forever. But I also knew I didn't owe my family the story of my salvation. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Months passed, I quit the firm. Philip finalized the trust. Investments grew roots in accounts I could barely comprehend, and slowly I built something real, a foundation, not in name only, but in purpose. We called it Hearth and Haven. Our mission, help elderly people living alone, especially those abandoned or overlooked by their families. The first time I stood in front of a group of volunteers, I felt more alive than I had at any client meeting. These weren't numbers, they were people. Mrs. Alvarez, who hadn't had a working stove in 3 years. Mr. Clark, who wanted someone to play chess with on Tuesday afternoons. We gave them more than money, we gave them presents. Charlotte became our outreach coordinator. Her nurse's heart and blunt humor steadied me. You're basically Robin Hood, she joked one night, pouring wine on my patio. Except you don't steal, you just redirect fate. Martha moved into a modest craftsman home 3 blocks from mine. A porch, a garden, wide doorways for the days her hip ached. She volunteered 3 mornings a week at a literacy program, tutoring kids who adored her. Her health improved. She laughed more. And every time I saw her, I remembered the envelope of worn bills on the diner table, the truest gift I'd ever received. My family didn't change. Not really. Dad still called on birthdays with his measured, professorial tone. Mom sent holiday cards with Warren's name listed first. Lisa texted occasionally about renovations or school fundraisers, dropping hints that always skirted the line of money talk. Jason, predictably, pitched a business idea over the phone, an investment opportunity. I listened politely, then said no. For the first time in my life, no cost me nothing. They didn't know. They still thought I'd landed a better job. And they accepted that story because it asked nothing from them, because their curiosity was always limited to what they could extract. And me, I didn't need them to know. When Dad had a heart scare, I anonymously covered his hospital bills. When Ryan finally went to rehab, I sent an anonymous donation to the center. They would never thank me. They didn't even know it was me. That was fine. The giving was mine to control now, not theirs to demand. 1 year after the night I hid the winning ticket, Martha and I sat on her porch, watching the sky paint itself in pinks and golds. She patted my hand. "You did good, kiddo, not with the money, with the choices." I looked at her overwhelmed. I had a good teacher. She smiled, eyes crinkling. "Remember this, money doesn't change people, it unmasks them." The breeze carried her words into the twilight. I thought about all the masks that had slipped this past year, Dad's lectures, Mom's excuses, Lisa's sympathetic eyes hiding her refusal, Jason's vanishing acts, Heather's scorn, and then Martha's steady hands offering nearly everything she had. The lottery hadn't ruined me. It had given me clarity. I sipped my tea, let the peace settle in. For the first time in my life, I wasn't desperate for approval. I wasn't terrified of the next bill. I wasn't bending myself into the shape of someone else's needs. I was free. And freedom, I realized, wasn't the millions in the bank. It was finally knowing which voices mattered and which didn't.